Part 85. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 841. Chapter 841 The Heart-Wrenching Crown Prince. Fan Kinjao didn't know about Fan Swinning's grounding. After swimming in the river with the elders at home, he ate at a nearby restaurant and waited until the sun went down before getting on the carriage back home. At the gate of the western suburbs mansion, the legs of the boy who came to deliver the message from the Cao family were trembling, and then he saw the Hua family's carriage slowly stopping at the foot of the steps. Tao Yuxian went up the steps surrounded by everyone. He saw the boy who came to deliver the message at a glance. He was also shocked. He knew that his sister's daughter-in-law must have arrived with her daughter. This was someone sent to deliver the message. But before Tao Yuxian could ask, the boy who came to deliver the message looked at the crowd and said, "They say the general's mansion has many rules, but in my opinion they are nothing more than that." The daughters-in-law of each house were simply stunned. This is not to blame for their lack of experience. After all, such generous young men are rare. This young man relied on his master to cover the sky with one hand in Ling Cheng, and naturally he looked down on others. Seeing that everyone in the Hua family was silent, he frowned and said, "Our eldest grandma said, you Hua family, the house was too big for us to offend and we couldn't afford to wait, so we took the young lady to live in an inn temporarily." Fan Kinjao quickly explained to his grandmother in a low voice, "My grandson thought that we would all go out to play today, so she asked the servants in the house to rest for the day." Tao Yuxian did not expect that Fan Kinjao would take it upon himself to give the servants a holiday. Although this matter was indeed the Hua family's negligence, in any case, it was not the turn of a servant from a foreign government to be so presumptuous at the door of the Hua family. In that case, let's stay in the inn properly. Our residence is small, and we are afraid that we cannot accommodate the two distinguished guests of your residence. Without saying a word, Tao Yuxian led people directly into the house. The boy who came to deliver the message was dumbfounded. He never expected that the Hua family would have such an attitude. Fan Zhao looked at the boy who came to deliver the message and said with a straight face, "If you understand, go back and deliver the message. We don't have room in front of Hua's house for you to stand in a daze." The boy originally wanted to reply, but looking at Fan Zhao's big and thick face, with a fierce look on his face, he couldn't say the words that came to his lips, so he could only hold back his anger and ran to the inn to spread the message. The servant suffered a loss in the Hua family, so naturally he would not speak for the Hua family. Tao Yuxian waited in the house for an hour, but did not wait for the message from there, knowing that he was angry with the Hua family. Waiting for the Hua family to take the initiative to lower their heads and pick them up. Tao Yuxian is concerned about the friendship between sisters, but she will not forget her identity. As a dignified wife of a general, of course she cannot bow her head to the younger generation. Otherwise, how should the people in the mansion behave after this matter is spread out? Since they like to live in inns, they can stay there forever. Even if we are sisters, the younger generation is the younger generation. Grandma has always paid attention to rules, so how could she allow the younger generation to bring shame on the Hua family? Fan Kinjao didn't feel surprised when he knew about this. On the contrary, she took action to arrange everything today just because she knew it would be like this. When Ning'an thought of the appearance of the young boy today, she couldn't help but say, "I didn't expect that my cousin was so angry. Even the servants below were so arrogant. This is fundamental. You don't take our Hua family seriously." Fan Kinjao sneered, "If you don't take it seriously, then have less to do with the Hua family. Grandma is right. If they like living in inns so much, then they should always stay in inns. The Hua family is indeed not as good as it was back then, but it is not the turn of others to judge." The master and servant in the room were talking when they saw Chai Wu swaying his dark body through the door. As soon as Ning'an saw Chi Wu, she knew that he must be here to help His Royal Highness deliver a message, so she quickly turned around and walked out. Fan Kinjao touched Chai Wu's head, then took the wax pill from its mouth, opened it carefully, and Bailey Fengming's familiar handwriting came into view. In total, it has been half a year since Bailey Fengming left. However, they have maintained correspondence with each other, which made Fan Kinjao ignore the time. Now that he counts carefully, he realizes that time flies by so fast. It is estimated that when Bailey Fengming wrote the letter, he had not received any news about the incident in the main city. The letter was all about the details of the investigation in the two cities. Ever since Bailey Fengming arrived in Liangcheng, Zhangping of Liangcheng had thrown all the mess to Bailey Fengming. Bailey Fengming knew in his heart that Zhangping of Liangcheng would bear his grudge, but the matter was, if the safety of the people in the two cities is in danger, how can it be the turn of the two cities to be petty? On the day Bailey Fengming wrote to Fan Kinjao, all the Zhangpings from the two cities were gathered together by Bailey Fengming. Zhangping from the two cities didn't think much of it at first, but how could they have imagined that His Highness the Prince would simply live there? In the Yamen, after reviewing the confessions of the people every day, they went to sleep on the spot. Soon, the matter spread in the two cities. Although the people in the two cities blamed the prince for the lack of progress in the investigation, they also saw the prince's hard work. As a result, the doubts about the prince slowly dissipated. But the prince can afford it? The combined age of Zhangping in the two cities is enough for him to be buried in peace. How can he afford it? Zhangping from Fengcheng could only lick his face and discuss with Bailey Fengming, "Your Highness, you have been interrogating me for more than 10 days without sleep. Why don't you go and rest first? After all, your health is important." Bailey Fengming knew very well that he had not been taken seriously in front of his father these years, and he was also a low-key person in the hearts of these ministers. Now, after listening to Fengcheng Zhangping's words, he still had an expression of no temper, but the words he said, but almost didn't give Fengcheng Zhangzheng a heart attack on the spot. There is no reason to delay such a big loss of a child. Could it be that the two Zhangpings were so eager to go to the main city to meet the saint just to find someone to come and rest with you? Fengcheng Zhangping. My heart hurts so much. Seeing this, Zhangping from Nanjing said bravely, even if His Royal Highness does not think about his own health, he must also consider it for the Emperor. If His Highness really makes any mistakes here, the Emperor will definitely be worried. Bailey Fengming glanced at Nanjing Zhangping calmly. It's true that it's not a son-in-law's fault to make the father worry, but I believe that the father also hopes to find the lost children quickly, so that the people who have lost their children can have a family reunion. Nanjing Zhangping. Multiply the heartache by 2. Zhangping from Liangcheng just couldn't figure it out. Why did the prince still look like a soft persimmon, but it was the two of them who were pinched in the end? However, Zhangping from the two cities finally saw that the prince was planning to fight to the end here. Originally, Zhangping from the two cities felt that with the prince standing in front of them, they could at least be lazy. After all, even if no results were found in this matter, the people scolded the prince instead of them. But not now. Not to mention that the attitude of the people is changing at a speed that is visible to the naked eye. If this continues, won't the prince want to put these two old bones into a coffin? Zhangping from Liangcheng really learned from the pain, and quickly cheered up and helped Bailey Fengming to investigate carefully. Although the progress was still slow, let alone find out something. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 842. Chapter 842 Mezusa Sutra. The candle light in the room was dim, and just by looking at the letter, Fan Kinjao could feel the two Zhangpings gritting their teeth and feeling helpless. Although Bailey Fengming did not say what he found in the letter, Fan Kinjao thought that it would be good as long as the people in the two cities solved the misunderstanding about Bailey Fengming. Fan Kinjao thought about what happened in the main city during this period, so he wrote it down in the letter. No matter whether Bailey Fengming could receive the news or not, he would always feel uneasy if he didn't personally remind him. After writing the letter, Fan Kinjao put the envelope into the wax pill. He turned around just to let Chaiwa go to Ninggan's place to eat before delivering the letter. When he lowered his eyes, he saw the black hair around Chaiwa's neck. There seems to be something hidden in it. Hand out his hand, it felt a little hard. Then he took it off and saw that it was a bracelet. It's just that the style of this bracelet is very special. It's not silver, but it's made up of pieces of different sizes and shapes. Looking at it by candlelight, I can't say it looks good, but it is indeed very unique. Fan Kinjao put the bracelet on his wrist, thinking that it would be Chinese Valentine's Day in a few days, and a warmth flowed through his heart. It's hard to think that while he was abusing Liang Cheng Zhongping, he still missed her. Chinese Valentine's Day comes quickly, and the main city is really lively on this day. Fan Kinjao actually doesn't like lively occasions very much. He originally thought of staying in the house for a day, but he didn't expect to receive a message from Han Jingchen early in the morning. He thought that he hadn't seen him for a while, so Fan Kinjao Yao simply packed up and got into the carriage. Nikeng expected that when Fan Kinjao arrived at Yaquanti house, he saw Han Jingchen chatting with Yan Hanbei. Yan Hanbei's belly is a lot bigger, but he still looks good. Fan Kinjao really didn't expect that Han Jingchen would also leave a message for Yan Hanbei. Although Yan Hanbei didn't come all the way with them, since they were standing together now, there was no need to continue to be separated. He just didn't expect that Han Jingchen could do it. He is so thoughtful and thoughtful. Han Jingchen raised his eyebrows when he looked at Fan Kinjao, with an expression that said nothing. At this moment, the door of the private room was pushed open again, and Sun Kentong stepped in. When he looked up, he saw Yan Hanbei sitting inside, and subconsciously stepped out again. Did she enter the wrong room? Looking at Sun Kentong's confused look, Han Jingchen smiled and said, "You're right, come in." Sun Kentong was relieved when he saw Fan Kinjao and Han Jingchen also in the room, but when his eyes fell on Yan Hanbei, he still had an unacceptable look on his face. This is no wonder, Sun Kentong is not the royal daughter-in-law, so she naturally doesn't know what happened during this period. Yan Hanbei has always been a carefree person. He was not angry when Sun Kentong stared at him. Instead, he took the initiative to smile and said, "In the past, my head was caught by the door panel and I did some bad things. But don't worry, I won't do anything bad in the future. I'll be stupid again." Sun Kentong looked at Fan Kinjao subconsciously. Fan Kinjao couldn't explain too much to Sun Kentong now, so he could only smile and nod. Sun Kentong looked at Fan Kinjao's attitude. Even if she didn't understand what was going on, she was relieved after all. No matter what happened, as long as Fan Kinjao nodded, she would naturally accept it. "Okay, sit down quickly. Those who don't know better may think you came here with a standing ticket." Han Jingchen patted the stool next to him and said with a smile. "With you, the Crown Princess, and yes, there is also a princess. If you don't sit down, how can I dare to sit down?" Sun Kentong said this, but he still sat down on the stool. "I am a princess to others, but I am a family to you," Yan Hanbei quickly explained. She never thought that one day she would be so nervous, but she really wanted to make friends with Fan Kinjao's friends. If she hadn't, Fan Kinjao and the prince will no longer have Princess Pinglai like her. Fan Kinjao carefully helped Yan Hanbei sit up, then smiled and said, "She just likes to joke, you just get used to it." Sun Kentong chuckled and was about to say something when he caught sight of Fan Kinjao's bracelet. His originally narrowed eyes widened in an instant. "Did I see something wrong?" After hearing this, Han Jingchen and Yan Hanbei looked at Fan Kinjao's wrist curiously. Fan Kinjao thought it was a gift from Bailey Fengming, so she put it on. Now seeing several people looking at her, she raised her wrist in surprise. "What's wrong?" Han Jingchen thought for a while and said, "I remember that this bracelet seems to have originated from the Buddhist Mujasa Sutra. It is made of tridacna, agate, crystal, coral, amber, pearls, colored glaze, etc. enshrined in Hyogyo temples from various countries. But I always just heard it as a legend, but I didn't expect it to actually exist. Yan Hanbei also followed. I heard it when I was a child, and it was also said that this bracelet can ward off evil spirits and ward off disasters. At that time, many high-ranking officials and nobles in the main city wanted to get it, but it seems that the total number of countries in the country could not be obtained. A few strings are priceless treasures. My father wanted to have a series of connections through various connections. Who would have thought that he hasn't even touched a shadow yet? Do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? What you are wearing on your hand and neck is a city. Sun Kongtong looked at the bracelet on Fan Kinjao's wrist and his mouth was about to drool. Fan Kinjao really didn't know that this bracelet had such a meaning, and he was stunned for a while. Han Jingchen said with a smile, "It's normal that you don't know. The Mujasa Sutra was most popular when it seemed to be right after you left the Fan family, and the only people who could get the news were wealthy people. Ordinary people were not even alive. It's not easy. How can you care about those who have something and don't have it?" Yan Hanbei. Can I say this casually? Who in the main city doesn't know that Fan Kinjao was kicked out of his home when he was young? Normally, it should be taboo, right? Sun Kongtong looked at Yan Hanbei and said, "It's okay. We don't mean anything malicious when we speak. Kinjao knows about it, so we don't have so many taboos." Han Jingchen was stunned for a moment, looking at the smiles flowing naturally on the faces of Sun Kentong and Han Jingchen, and seeing that Fan Kinjao didn't look angry at all, he was really envious from the bottom of his heart. In such a world, having such friendship is simply more precious than 1,000 pieces of gold. Of course Fan Kinjao doesn't care about Han Jingchen and Sun Kentong. Now she just can't figure out why the good Bailey Fengming gave her a bracelet. "I guess His Highness the Prince wants Buddha to bless you," Han Jingchen said with a smile. Sun Kentong was stunned. "How did you know it was from His Highness the Crown Prince? Kinjao doesn't even know what this bracelet is. Naturally, it's impossible to buy it for himself. Moreover, this bracelet is hard to find. It's not just money. And among us, only one of us can be so grand. His Royal Highness is the only one left." Sun Kentong. It's really exciting to death. Han Jingchen looked at Sun Kentong's envious and jealous expression and fully understood. The prince's thoughts on Fan Kinjao were not comparable to those of their family. Several people in the room were talking when they suddenly heard a sharp questioning voice coming from downstairs. "How do you do business in your store?" End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 843. Chapter 843. A group of bumpkins. Sun Kentong has always been a good believer. Hearing the quarrel coming from downstairs, he quickly opened the window of the private room. The reason why this tea house is called Yakwan is because its architectural pattern is a circle, with hollows from the bottom to the bottom. Therefore, even if Sun Kongtong and others are in the private room on the second floor, they can clearly see the lobby on the first floor. Situation. At the moment, Fan Kinjao looked at the few heads gathered around the window and didn't know what to say. The reason why the tea house is designed like this is to allow the guests inside to better listen to music and watch the show. But now it is regarded as a convenience by you to watch the excitement. At this time, at the entrance of the lobby, a woman dressed as a maid was holding her waist and looking at the shopkeeper behind the counter. "I want to ask you, do you in this tea house look down on our third prince's aunt?" Hearing these words, the few people who were lying by the window subconsciously turned back to look at Fan Kinjao. The third prince's aunt. Isn't that Fan Kinjao's sister? Fan Kinjao glanced out the window curiously after hearing the voice, and looked at the maid carefully before nodding and saying, "I did see this face last time at the third prince's residence, but it seemed that the maid was still there at that time." The third prince's concubine serves. Sun Kongtong was extremely surprised, nowadays, and stared to the maids of the princes and concubines. "Isn't this too arrogant?" Fan Kinjao was also a little surprised, so he continued to look downstairs. The shopkeeper at the counter also looked at the maid helplessly. "I'm really sorry, the longxiu cake is a limited supply in the shop. Just now, a customer has reserved the rest. There is really no more. Why don't you come back tomorrow? The store will definitely keep it for you." The maid snorted coldly. "Who are the other guests? How can they be compared to Aunt Fan from the third prince's mansion?" Han Jingchen watched the waiter bring out several plates of longxiu cake from the back kitchen, heading towards their private room, and silently cast his eyes on Sun Kentong. When it comes to foodies, Sun Kentong is the leader among them. Sun Kentong shrugged helplessly. When she made the reservation, she never expected that there would be such a smooth agreement. Seeing this, Fan Kinjao had no intention of giving in. She is not bad at eating, but whether she eats or not is one thing, and others reaching out to grab it is another matter. It happened that Fan Swinning's maid put her hand into her mouth to grab the food. Such an arrogant behavior, it is naturally impossible for Fan Kinjao to get used to him. "Stop." When the maid saw the waiter about to go upstairs with the longxiu cake, she stopped him directly. The shopkeeper was also panicked when he saw this, and hurried over to persuade her. "Girl, you'd better stop arguing. The guests in the private room upstairs have already been booked." The maid said resolutely, "What is the status of the third prince, and what is the status of the others? Do you think that something happened to the third prince, so you started to look down on him? Bailey Rongs is indeed still imprisoned in Dali Temple, but the matter has never been decided. Even if the people in the main city reject the third prince in their hearts, they would never dare to say this to his face. No matter how bad the third prince is, he is still a son of a dragon and a phoenix grandson. How can others comment on him? I don't dare to look down on the third prince, but I really can't give these plates of dragon beard cakes to the girl. They are a few distinguished guests, not to mention that the shop can't be neglected, they are fan from the third prince's house. Auntie, I'm afraid I can't afford to be neglectful either," the shopkeeper advised earnestly. After all, when Han Jingchen decided to settle here, he got the sixth prince's mansion sign. Bah! What kind of distinguished guest? I can't help but think that he is just a country bumpkin who has never seen a few plates of dragon beard cake. How can he compare with Aunt Fan from our third prince's mansion? Even those country bumpkins deserve it, the maid sneered. During this period of time, Aunt Fan, the tide in the mansion was rising, and even the third prince and concubine had to give in a little bit. Originally, Han Jingchen did not intend to get involved in this kind of dispute, but he never thought that an aunt's maid could be so arrogant. If she didn't speak up, wouldn't she be bullied to the top of her head? Just when the shopkeeper and the maid were in a stalemate, Han Jingchen, who was lying at the window, sneered and said, "Aunt Fan in the third prince's mansion is really good. She really makes me feel inferior." This voice. The maid was stunned for a moment, and her first thought was that it sounded familiar. As Han Jingchen's voice sounded, people in the lobby on the first floor also looked upstairs subconsciously, and the maid took the opportunity to also look up. When she clearly saw the people standing by the window, the maid felt like she was struck by thunder, her legs instinctively became weak, and she just said, plop. He knelt down on the ground with a cry. Sixth Prince Concubine, Princess Ping Lai, Crown Princess. No matter who it is something that a little slave like her cannot afford to offend. The shopkeeper looked at the maid's appearance of instantly wilting, without any pity. If you had known this, why did you do it in the first place? For a time, the lobby on the first floor was as quiet as a chicken. No one expected that they would meet such a few distinguished figures appearing together. Han Jingchen looked at the maid kneeling on the ground and sneered, "Weren't you so impressive just now? Why are your legs and feet suddenly not flexible? But is there any hidden disease you were born with?" The maid was so frightened that she knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing, "Sixth prince, please forgive me, forgive me." Yan Hanbei looked at the maid's face that changed in an instant, and remembered Fan Swining's face turning her face away. A burst of retching came to her heart. Since you are a slave, you must keep your duty and never admit your mistakes, but he only knows how to ask for forgiveness from others. Isn't this the style of the third prince's house? The maid only dared to cause trouble in the third prince's mansion, but she did not dare to throw dirty water on the third prince's mansion. She quickly said, "It's all my fault. It's because I don't have eyes to see Mount Tai, so I asked Princess Pinglay to give me a lot of help." This maid is indeed worthy of being able to crawl to Fan Swining's side. She is indeed somewhat scheming. Even if she made a mistake first, she acted in a low-key manner in time, showing a pitiful appearance of knowing her mistakes and being able to change them. If Yan Hanbei and Han Jingchen did it again, if we continue to pursue the case, it will appear to be unreasonable. Yan Hanbei was so angry that why were the things around Fan Swining so cunning? Han Jingchen patted Yan Hanbei on the shoulder, "You still have a baby in your belly. Don't get angry because of irrelevant people." Yan Hanbei sighed. Even if he was unwilling to do so, he could only give up. When the maid saw this, a hint of cunning flashed in her eyes, and she took the opportunity to get up and leave. Fan Qinjiao suddenly said, "I suddenly remembered that I received an invitation from the third prince concubine a few days ago. Since we met today, you should go back and tell Aunt Fan in your house that we will be together in a few days. The country bumpkin who can't even afford longxia cake will definitely come to visit, and then he will have to trouble Aunt Fan." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 844. Chapter 844, Who are you looking at? Pan Yula posted the post. Why did she insist on informing Fan Swining? It is natural to prepare her to serve others. On that day, in addition to the prince's concubine, the only ones present were the princess and the crown prince. Naturally, a little ant could only serve as a servant. After hearing this, the maid's legs became weak again, and she almost fell to the ground again. Originally, she thought that as long as she pretended to be pitiful, no matter what happened to the crown princess and others, it would not be easy to pursue, and the matter would pass without anyone noticing. However, who would have thought that the crown princess would treat Aunt Fan as soon as she opened her mouth? Got involved. Now, the maid can't hide it even if she wants to. The princess is a devil, right? Otherwise, why would you press on someone else's life as soon as you take action? Just thinking about Aunt Fan's sinister face after hearing about this incident can make the maid cry out of fear. The maid left with a look of despair, and Long Susu was also sent in by the servant. Han Jingchen wanted to laugh when he looked at the Long Susu on the table. Qinjiao is better, otherwise that slave will really take advantage of him. Fan Qinjiao smiled and said, "It just happened to occur to me." When she received Pan Yulu's post, she didn't take it seriously at all. It could even be said that she had no intention of going there. But today when she saw that even the maids around her ran to Fan Swining's side, Fan Qinjiao felt that the third prince's mansion, I'm afraid something unknown happened here. Thinking about this, Fan Qinjiao asked, "Have you received any messages from the third prince's concubine?" Yan Hanbei and Han Jingchen both nodded. Originally, they had no plans to go. After all, their relationship was not good. Could it be that they were overly jealous after going there? Fan Qinjiao said, "Some time ago, I heard from the 8th prince's concubine that she had some quarrels with the 3rd prince before she fell ill. Now, although the 3rd prince's concubine is still recovering from her illness, it is not Aunt Fan's turn. Showing off one's strength, I always feel that there is something fishy about this matter." Han Jingchen pondered, "Qinjiao, Do you mean you want to go and have a look? Fan Kinjao nodded after hearing this. Although Fan Swinning and Pan Yulu are both beings she despises, if compared with the two, she naturally hopes that Pan Yulu can crush Fan Swinning's head. If Fan Swinning really takes the opportunity to climb up, for not good news for her. Han Jingchen said, then I will go and take a look with you. Yan Hanbei also smiled and said, anyway, it was an idle day, so count me in. Sun Kantong. Have never regretted not becoming the prince's concubine so much. She really didn't want to miss such excitement. The date on the third prince's post was on the second day after Chinese Valentine's Day, so Fan Kinjao and others did not get together too late that day. They went back to the mansion early to sleep, intending to recuperate for the next day. Charge up. Who would have thought that Fan Kinjao had just finished washing up the next day when he saw Ning Han running out of the door in a hurry? Miss, someone from the third prince's residence just now told me that the third prince's concubine was unwell and cancelled today's gathering. Nanny Su frowned and said, logically speaking, the third prince's concubine can be considered a lady, how could she be so rude and unruly? If she really wanted to cancel, she should have sent someone early on the day of the banquet. If you cancel again, who can afford it? Fan Kinjao also laughed angrily. He had sent someone here, so he looked down on her. Continue combing my hair. Fan Kinjao stood up and walked to the dressing table. Is the young lady still planning to go? Nanny Su was a little worried. The third prince's concubine did something unethical, but if the young lady insisted on going her own way to the third prince's mansion and was rejected, wouldn't it be a slap in the face? But Fan Kinjao was thinking about something else. It was the third prince's concubine who posted the post, and now she is the one who cancelled the party. If I really followed her wishes, I would be really embarrassed. The third prince's concubine, her status may sound noble, but she is nothing in front of me. After Fan Kinjao calmed down his anger, he got into the carriage and headed towards the third prince's residence. She wanted to see if Pan Yulu had the ability to keep her, the princess, out of the door. The morning sun was so warm that the guards at the entrance of the third prince's residence secretly dozed off. Suddenly he heard the sound of horse hoofbeats coming from far and near. The guard opened his eyes impatiently and was about to ask who had disturbed his rest. He didn't expect to be completely dumbfounded when he saw the person coming. Tai, Crown Princess. Ning'an helped Fan Kinjao up the steps, looked at the wide-eyed guard and angrily said, you are such an unruly thing. Why don't you go in and announce the arrival of the Crown Princess? The guard came to his senses belatedly and quickly turned around and ran into the mansion. Fan Swinning, who was having breakfast in the room at this time, heard that the Crown Princess had arrived and was right outside the door. She was so shocked that the spoons in her hands fell on the table. She clearly sent someone to push them away in the name of the third princess. After today's small gathering, why is Fan Kinjao still here? I will ask the maid next to the third prince to go out and reject the prince. The maid standing beside said so and left. Fan Swinning shouted angrily, stop. The maid was stunned by the scolding. Does Aunt Fan really intend to let the crown princess in? But if the crown princess really sees something, how will Aunt Fan explain to the third prince when he comes back? It's not that Fan Swinning doesn't understand these principles. But Fan Swinning knows better than anyone how difficult Fan Kinjao is. The most hateful thing is that Fan Kinjao now has the status of a princess to support him. Even the third prince's concubine is nothing in front of Fan Kinjao, let alone a little ant. Get me dressed. But Aunt Fan. Shut up. Fan Swinning looked at herself in the mirror and suppressed the panic in her eyes. Just after the maids had packed up, Fan Swinning did not go to the entrance of the mansion immediately. Instead, she took a detour and walked into the front yard where the third prince and concubine were. No one knows what Aunt Fan said to the third princess. The only thing the servants in the yard heard was the extremely suppressed crying sound of the third princess. The main courtyard is not far from the entrance of the mansion. It was Fan Kinjao who was standing at the door. She vaguely seemed to hear bursts of crying. But just when she wanted to listen carefully again, she suddenly heard a cry from behind her. The sound of horse hooves. Fan Kinjao turned around in surprise and saw several carriages parked behind him. Soon after, Yan Hanbei, Han Jingchen, and even the 8th and 2nd princesses all got off the carriage. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 845. Chapter 845 Fan Kinjao will not bear the blame. In fact, not long after Fan Kinjao received the news that the third prince's mansion had sent someone to cancel the get-together, the other princes and concubines also received the news. However, based on the understanding of the princes and concubines about Fan Kinjao, they always felt that Fan Kinjao would never get used to the fact that the third prince and concubine could make such a careless act, so the princes and concubines could not understand it. Suindi sent people to keep an eye on the third prince's residence in advance. Now that they heard that Fan Kinjao was indeed here, they couldn't be absent. Fan Kinjao. It's really rare for you two to work together. You will pay more attention to Princess Pinglai later, and remember to take care of her body. Fan Kinjao whispered to Han Jingchen, don't implicate innocent lives because of adults' matters. Han Jingchen nodded, don't worry, just leave it to me. The 8th prince's concubine had long known that the crown prince and the 6th prince had a good relationship. Now that she saw the two of them talking quietly, she consciously took a step back and admired the scenery outside the third prince's residence. The 2nd princess looked at the back of the princess and hesitated to speak. Although she wanted to step forward to speak, she felt ashamed when she thought of what happened when she invited the princess to the house last time. While everyone was thinking about their own thoughts, the closed door of the third prince's residence finally opened slowly. Fan Xuening Leng, who came out to greet him in person, felt his scalp numb when he saw so many people. He subconsciously looked at the guards on the side. Didn't he say that Fan Kinjao was the only one? What was going on with these people now? The guard, who was also a monk 2 feet tall, was confused. When he went in to report, it was clear that the princess was alone. Fan Kinjao saw Fan Xuening's eyes communicating with the guards, looking at Aunt Fan, does it mean she is not welcome? Fan Xuening quickly put on a smile and said, sister, I was joking. It was the third prince's concubine who took the initiative to post it. Now that all the princes and concubines can come to visit, the third prince's mansion should be in full bloom. Yan Hanbei could not stand Fan Xuening's double-dealing. He snorted coldly and looked away, fearing that if he looked at her one more time, he would have to spit out his overnight meal. Han Jingchen really admires Fan Xuening. She is clearly hiding her smile, but she can still call her sister so kindly. She really is not embarrassed by herself, it is others who are embarrassed. Fan Kinjao has no time to practice Tai Chi with Fan Xuening here. Aunt Fan is really warm and hospitable. She is completely different from the arrogant servants around her. However, I am very curious. Aunt Fan is so humble. How can you teach such a slave with his eyes above his head? Even the servants are poorly disciplined masters, who at best are weak and incompetent and at worst are useless. These words were clearly a slap in Fan Xuening's face. The 8th prince's concubine was curious after hearing this, what slave is so arrogant? Yan Hanbei snorted coldly, more than just arrogance, I think we in Ziliang are almost unable to accommodate her. Not to mention me and the 6th prince, even the prince is a bumpkin in the eyes of others. 8th princess. My, where is the brave man who dares to ridicule the crown princess like this? The 2nd princess also looked surprised, I didn't know there were such rampant slaves. Han Jingchen glanced sideways at the 2nd prince and concubine, then the 2nd prince and concubine is really ignorant. We don't know how Aunt Fan trained her to condition her slave to look like that. We don't know either, and we don't dare to ask. Fan Xuening, I felt cold sweat flowing down my back. Speaking of which, it was all my fault in training. I have severely punished that slave. Now he is waiting inside to apologize to the sixth prince, Princess Pinglay, and my sister Fanswinning turned sideways and quickly invited the person inside. That anxious look, as if there was a wolf chasing after him. However, Fanswinning did not lie. She followed everyone to the main courtyard. As soon as she entered the courtyard, she saw the maid kneeling on the ground and being tied up. At this time, the maid's tongue had been cut out, her teeth had been knocked out, her whole red and swollen face was covered with blood scabs, and the front of her clothes was covered with dark brown blood stains. She was supported by two old ladies, and she had obviously entered the hospital. More anger and less anger. Such a scene frightened several princes and concubines present. Yan Hanbei subconsciously held his stomach and took a step back. His face turned extremely pale. Did he beat the person to death? Fanswinning explained with a smile, since he bumped into the sixth prince, Princess Pinglay, and the crown princess, this slave deserves to die. Fan Kinjao is very aware of Fanswinning's hobby of removing things from people's bodies, just like in her previous life, every piece of flesh on her body was cut off by Fanswinning. But now you have committed the crime yourself, but you still want to let others take the blame for you? Sorry, she can't bear the blame. I remember when I came here last time, I saw her serving the third prince's concubine. Whether it was given to Aunt Fan by the third prince's concubine or received by Fanswinning from other places, she should be treated well. Fan Kinjao, a word that was neither salty nor bland, directly pushed Fanswinning to the forefront. The maid who was originally serving the third prince's concubine ended up dying in your hands. Who knows whether this was a severe punishment or simply because she wanted to get rid of the people around the third prince's concubine. Fanswinning was stunned. This basin of dirty water was thrown at her and she was completely defenseless. What my sister said is that my sister was too harsh. I will remember this in the future. What else could Fanswinning say? Can't say anything. Fan Kinjao smiled and said, I don't have a strict sister like Aunt Fan. Fanswinning. Isn't it okay for her to bow her head? Fan Kinjao smiled lightly and walked directly towards the main room. The other princes and concubines saw this and quickly followed. When Yan Hanbei passed by Fanswinning, he could clearly notice that Fanswinning's gaze was still as aggrieved and weak as before, which made people feel distressed. Yan Hanbei fell into the lies spun by Fanswinning in the past. Now, let alone pity, her throat would be tight if she didn't spit it out on the spot. Fanswinning saw that Yan Hanbei ignored her, a flash of resentment flashed in her eyes, but soon she returned to her previous look and followed the others through the door. As soon as you step in, a strong bitter smell comes from the shop. Not to mention Yan Hanbei, who quickly covered his mouth and nose. Everyone else also held their breath. What kind of medicine is this, and why does it taste so bitter? Fan Kinjao frowned, and soon realized that the taste contained jujube kernels, purple salvia, Schisandra chinensis and other medicinal materials. It didn't have much side effects. They were all mind-restoring medicines. I am afraid that I took it too much and for too long, and the smell in the house never dissipated, which is why it became so pungent. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 846. Chapter 846. Every slap is justified. On the bed, Panula was sitting weakly. When she saw everyone walking in, she curved her lips and showed a smile. However, she was probably too weak. Before she could speak, she started coughing violently. Cough, 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 cough. Panula kept coughing, tears oozing out of the corners of her eyes. The maids and nuns who were just standing aside were standing stiffly on the spot, showing no movement at all. Fan Swinning quickly walked to the bed with a cup of tea. The third princess quickly took a sip of tea to moisten her throat. Pan Yu appeared and faced Fan Swinning's approach. Her body instinctively dodged, but she couldn't stop coughing, so she could only take the teacup from Fan Swinning's hand. The way he takes such careful care is really impressive. But Fan Swinning could deceive others, but she could not deceive Fan Kinjao's eyes alone. From the moment Fan Swinning entered the door, the atmosphere in the room was obviously a lot more depressing. Just when Pan Yula coughed, the maids and grandmothers on the side had anxious looks in their eyes, and they were obviously worried about Pan Yula. Obviously worried but not daring to act rashly. It was obvious that he was afraid of something. Although the person standing in the room at the moment was either the prince or the princess, it didn't mean that the people serving Pan Yula didn't even dare to move. So it is obvious that the person these people are worried about is Fan Swinning. We want to catch up with the third prince and concubine, so we won't bother Aunt Fan Kinjao said directly to see the guests off. She had no time to waste time watching Fan Swinning's pretentious performance. Fan Swinning's body visibly stiffened, and when she came back to her senses, she looked at Fan Kinjao with an aggrieved and innocent look on her face. But what did I do wrong? If sister thinks I did something wrong, I can change it, but I'm really worried about the three. The body of the princess is still there. I hope my sister won't kick me out. Just now I saw Aunt Fan's method of punishing the slaves. I thought Aunt Fan was a very self-aware person. But now I see that she is nothing more than that. There is no respect for family ties before the rules. Doesn't Aunt Fan not know such a simple truth? Or is Aunt Fan willing? Test the law by yourself and punish yourself like the slave just now? To put it bluntly, when the princes and concubines are talking, you, the aunt, have no place to stay alone. The surrounding princes and concubines looked at the scene and didn't know what to say. Although it is no secret that the crown princess and Aunt Fan are not on good terms, who would have thought that there are so many differences between Aunt Fan and the crown princess? They are just going to be beaten again. More importantly, every word the princess said was reasonable. To put it bluntly, every slap Aunt Fan received on the face was justified. Pan Yula looked at Fan Swinning, who had no choice but to turn around and leave. She had never appreciated Fan Kinjao's sharp teeth like she did at this moment, and even her heavy chest felt relieved. Following Fan Swinning's departure, the servants in the room obviously breathed a sigh of relief. The maid quickly poured tea for Pan Yula to make her happy, while the aunt looked at Pan Yula's face and her eyes turned red silently. With such an obvious gap between the front and back, other people in the room understood what was going on, no matter how slow they were. But everyone really didn't expect that Pan Yula would be bullied like this by a concubine one day. It was really sad to think about it. Third princess, you are also a decent lady, and the niece of concubine Panda in the palace. Now that you are living like this, who are you worthy of? Yan Hanbei frowned and asked. Hearing this, the second prince's concubine and the eighth prince's concubine widened their eyes inexplicably. Princess Pinglay still dares to say. Third princess, please don't take it to heart. Princess Pinglay's temper has always been like this. She did speak a little arrogantly, but there was no malice. Han Jingchen grabbed Yan Hanbei's hand, looked at Pan Yula with a smile, and said in her heart she was so anxious that she wanted to scold her. What kind of person was he? And he still stimulated her. If he really passed out, everyone present would not be able to shirk responsibility. Yan Hanbei looked at Pan Yula steadily, not intending to take back what he said. She will never forgive Pan Yula, but after all, they are just friends. Now seeing Pan Yula like this, she doesn't feel very good in her heart. What Princess Pinglay said is that it was my own failure that led to such a life. But if you think about it carefully, I really envy Princess Pinglay's straightforward temperament. Pan Yula sat on the bed and said. He looked at Yan Hanbei and smiled while coughing. If she also had Yan Hanbei's temperament, could she also resolve her past feud with Fan Kinjao? But now that she has arrived in this world, there is no use in talking about envy. Yan Hanbei sighed silently and turned his eyes away from Pan Yulu. Out of sight, out of mind. Seeing this, the 8th princess and the 2nd princess breathed a sigh of relief. They hurriedly came to Pan Yulu's side and chatted in random ways to ease the atmosphere. Han Jingchen took the opportunity to get close to Fan Qinjiao and said, "Should we think about it in advance, how to deal with it if the 3rd prince's concubine makes a fuss about Princess Pinglei's rude words? Pan Yulu is bedridden now. Normally, she would not miss the opportunity to frame Yan Hanbei at this time. Although the matter would not lead to death even if it got serious, the effect of the response can still be achieved." But now Fan Qinjiao said, "Don't worry, she won't do it." Yan Hanbei was stunned. "Are you sure?" Fan Qinjiao nodded. "Although I don't know what Pan Yulu has been through during these days, Pan Yulu's eyes are unexpectedly calm now, and she says calmly that there is no more calculation or hope, just like a puddle of ashes." Han Jingchen didn't know how Fan Qinjiao figured out that Pan Yulu wouldn't take the opportunity to cause trouble, but since Fan Qinjiao said that Pan Yulu wouldn't, she stopped worrying about it. Seeing Yan Hanbei sitting alone in a daze, she was afraid Yan Hanbei said something uncontrollable again and walked over quickly. The atmosphere in the room gradually became more lively with the chatter of everyone. Although Pan Yulu rarely spoke, she was really listening to the 2nd and 8th princesses talking attentively. When they saw the two talking about something exciting, from time to time, I laugh with everyone, feeling rare peace of mind. Faced with such a 3rd prince and concubine, even others began to be surprised. But at this moment, Fan Swinning entered the door again, followed by someone, "Aunt Liao from the 2nd prince's mansion is here. She said that the 2nd prince's concubine forgot the veil, so she specially brought it over." Hearing this, everyone looked at Liao Yue who was beside Fan Swinning. Liao Yue met everyone's gaze and responded with a generous smile, "I have met Princess Pinglei, several princes and princesses, and the crown prince." At the end of the sentence, he did not forget to show a friendly smile to Fan Qinjiao, as if what happened before did not exist at all. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 847. Chapter 847, If not, who will you slap? Fan Qinjiao has seen Liao Yue's hypocrisy a long time ago, and he can't say that he is surprised now. However, Liao Yue was able to enter the gate of the 3rd prince's residence. Fan Swinning must have contributed a lot to it. It seems that even if Liao Yue marries the 2nd prince in this life, the Liao family will still help Bailey wrongs. Liao Yue didn't care when she saw Fan Qinjiao's cold attitude towards her. Anyway, her courtesy was enough. As for Fan Qinjiao, he was a bastard. It was normal for him to have bad rules. Before marrying into the 2nd prince's mansion, Liao Yue followed her elders more than once to the palace secretly to meet concubine Yu. It was from concubine Yu that she learned that Fan Qinjiao became the crown prince. That's because concubine Yu doesn't like her at all. Liao Yue thought it was right. Fan Qinjiao had been kicked out of the house since he was a child. To put it bluntly, he was a who grew up in the countryside. Concubine Yu would naturally look down on a person of this status. On the contrary, it is more suitable for the prince who is always stepped on by the 3rd prince. Fortunately, both concubine Yu and concubine Han agreed to her. As long as the 3rd prince sat in that position, she would be the 2nd prince's official concubine. And when that time really comes, whether it is the current 2nd prince's concubine or the 2nd prince's concubine, the crown princess is not worthy of carrying her shoes. So even though Liao Yue is just a concubine now, she is still very arrogant. "It's just a veil, why bother you with making another trip?" The 2nd princess stood up and walked to Liao Yue's side. She seemed to feel sorry for Liao Yue, but in fact, when she took the veil, she gritted her teeth tightly. Because she knew very well that she didn't leave any veil behind that was worthy of Liao Yue personally delivering it. Liao Yue smiled faintly and said, serving the second prince's concubine is what I should do. The second princess held the handkerchief tightly and was too lazy to speak any more. Fan Swinning suddenly smiled and said, it is rare for several distinguished guests to come to the mansion. However, the third prince's concubine is really in poor health and has not been taken care of well. I hope that all distinguished guests will be considerate. I have already ordered people to prepare a few small boats and invited a few more. A distinguished guest moves to the backyard. Even if Liao Yue didn't take the second prince's concubine seriously, she would at least still call herself my concubine. But looking at Fan Swinning, she is now calling herself me. The strangest thing is that no one in the third prince's house thinks it's inappropriate. Enough to show Fan Swinning's current status. July is indeed a good time to visit the lake, but now looking at the sick Pan Yulu on the bed, who is in the mood to sit on the boat and laugh and have fun. But before anyone could politely refuse, Fan Swinning had already walked to the bed and helped Pan Yulu up herself. Some time ago, I heard that the third princess said that all the lotus flowers in the mansion were in bloom, so I took it to heart. I have prepared carefully for several days, just thinking that I can make the third prince and princess smile happily today. Hearing these words, Pan Yulu's body became stiff with anger. She has never said anything about lotus flowers, not in a nice way. Now that she is about to lose her life, how can she still think about admiring lotus flowers? But Fan Swinning has reached this point. If she really refuses, it means that she is ignorant. Not to mention how the people present think of her. If this matter reaches the ears of the third prince, when the third prince comes back, he will still I don't know how to embarrass her. It's really time to thank and fan Pan Yulu, who had no way to retreat, could only stand up reluctantly and said. This is what I should do. With a smile on her face, Fan Swinning asked her servants to help Pan Yulu change her clothes. Pan Yulu was also laughing, but the smile on her face was so bright that she wanted to strangle Fan Swinning to death with her own hands. When the others saw that the third prince and concubine agreed, they could only swallow their rejection back into their stomachs. Seeing that people were already busy washing and changing Pan Yulu's clothes, everyone in the room consciously retreated outside the door and went to the yard to wait. What kind of lake are you swimming in? Han Jingchen complained in a low voice as soon as he went out. Putting aside the fact that they have never swum in any lake, how could they care about the small man-made lake in the third prince's residence? Yan Hanbei is still pregnant now. Who cares if she bumps into it? Yan Hanbei seemed to have noticed something, covering his stomach with a vigilant look on his face. Don't go to the lake for a while. Just wait on the shore. You are Princess Pinglai. Even if you really don't want to, no one will dare to embarrass you. Fan Qinjiao kept looking at her when he spoke. Looking at Liao Yue, who was standing with the second prince and concubine not far away. Yan Hanbei also realized that now was not the time to elaborate, so he nodded silently. While they were talking here, Liao Yue came over with a smile following the second princess. Before the second princess could speak, Liao Yue took the initiative to walk up to Fan Qinjiao and said, that day, I was talking to the princess at the house. I was unhappy, and I reflected on it carefully afterwards, and it was all my fault, but the crown princess, I guess, would not argue with me. This was said as if it was Fan Qinjiao's fault that he didn't forgive her. Hearing these words, the eighth prince's concubine's outlook was shattered. This was something a concubine could say. It was too arrogant. She instinctively looked at the second prince's concubine and said directly, you my concubines are about to go to heaven, so you don't care? What else can the second prince and concubine do? He had no choice but to look away from the eighth prince's concubine. She also wants to take care of it, but there is nothing she can do about it. To put it bluntly, she is just a tool now. And Liao, instead of asking for forgiveness from others, it would be better to reflect on her own mistakes. Fan Qinjiao looked at Liao Yue and said calmly. Want to run in front of her to feel present? Does not exist at all. Liao Yue smiled but said, Princess, noble people often forget things. I just said that I have reflected on it. Fan Kinjao interrupted directly. I thought that that day in the second prince's house, Aunt Liao cried and knelt down, and also lost a slave, so she should have realized something, but now it seems that Aunt Liao should continue. It's the one who reflects on himself. If Aunt Liao really reflects on herself, she would know why I won't forgive you, instead of asking for my forgiveness like this. Hearing this, the others pricked up their ears curiously. They felt that something was wrong with the way Aunt Liao looked at Fan Kinjao. It turned out that Fan Kinjao had been defeated a long time ago. Facing everyone's gaze, the smile on Liao Yue's face froze. What does it mean to bring up old things again? This is clearly a slap on her face. Looking at this scene, the second princess couldn't help but feel relieved. She was obviously not as good as others, but she still had to lick her face and push her up. If not, who would you slap? While they were talking here, Fan Swinning walked out with Pan Yula over there. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 848. Chapter 848. The little wife is the little wife. Under the sun, Pan Yula's face was glowing with a faint dark yellow color, and even her pupils were a little cloudy. Compared with all the vibrant scenes around her, she seemed so lifeless. With the help of her servants, Pan Yula was extremely cautious every step she took, as if she might fall to the ground at any time if the wind got stronger. Compared with Pan Yula, who took one step and took 3 breaths, Fan Swinning was obviously much more active. Not only did he take the initiative to lead the way for everyone, but he also kept instructing the servants around him to do this and that in the house. The other servants obeyed his words without any complaints. Fan Swinning really stole the show. Those who didn't know, thought she was the mistress of this house. Liao Yue, who was following the second princess, looked at Fan Swinning like this. It would be a lie to say that she was not envious. Although concubine Yu and concubine Han Xian had promised her, they were both concubines at the moment. Fan Swinning could only do what she wanted. But that can't be done now. Even though Fan Swinning was walking in front, she could still feel the eyes of everyone behind her. Invisible to everyone, the corners of her lips curled up in a proud arc. That's exactly what she wanted. In the dream, she was superior to everyone else. In the dream, she had the status and the emperor's favor that all women dreamed of. But what about in reality? Fan Kinjao always had the upper hand and always stepped on her head. However, Fan Swinning always believed that the dream was a guide for her, allowing her to move towards her own glory step by step. Just like now, she just wants to tell everyone that she is the one who has the final say in the third prince's mansion. That. How could Fan Kinjao not see Fan Swinning's intention to show off? But compared to Fan Swinning's complacency, Fan Kinjao wanted to find out what happened in the third prince's house. After all, Pan Yula was married by the emperor, and the third prince Ming matchmaker was marrying a concubine. If it weren't for one of them, what's the hidden secret? Even if Bailey Wrongs was concerned about the emperor, he couldn't do the evil thing of pampering his concubine and destroying his wife. However, Fan Kinjao can turn a blind eye to Fan Swinning's show-off, but it does not mean that others can pretend not to see it. It's strange to say that the scenery inside the third prince's mansion is really unique. Other people's mansions have more flowers and less grass, but the third prince's mansion obviously has more grass and less flowers. If you don't look carefully, you can still see flowers. The shadows were all taken over by the soldiers. The eighth prince looked like she was admiring the scenery, but in fact everyone knew what kind of mystery was hidden in her words. Liao Yue smiled and said, "What the eighth prince said makes sense, but many things are beyond human control. For example, these flowers themselves are not up to par. No matter how carefully the servants take care of them, they are nothing. It's just a waste of time." After hearing this, Han Jingchen looked at the second princess and said, the second prince doesn't seem to talk much on weekdays. I didn't expect that the concubine who was trained can be very eloquent. But it's okay to talk to us freely. If we wait, it's still like this after entering the palace, and the person I lost is the second prince. Halfway through speaking, Han Jingchen seemed to remember something, covered his mouth and laughed. Oh, I forgot, concubines are not qualified to enter the palace. Liao Yue. Is the crown princess's sharp tongue contagious or something? Why do people who are close to the crown princess talk like they are cutting flesh? Yan Hanbei was too lazy to listen to these convoluted words and said directly, I am a concubine. No matter how public I am still a little wife. I can't be engraved with the royal jade butterfly when I am alive. I can't be buried in the royal ancestral graves after I die. I really don't know. What's so good about it? If you ask me, it's better to accumulate some virtue while you're still alive, so as not to be buried in the wilderness after you die. Maybe you will be a lonely ghost and be captured by evil spirits to continue. Be a little wife. Everybody. It is indeed Princess Pinglay, who is refreshing. Fan Kinjao really couldn't hold back his laughter. Just say what you say, don't get angry, be careful of fetal contamination. Yan Hanbei held his belly and groaned, I just can't stand the virtue of the little chicken climbing on the head of the old hen. I'm not afraid of falling to death halfway. The people around him couldn't help laughing when they heard this. Princess Hire is right in saying that people must be self-aware. If you don't even have self-knowledge, aren't you no different from an animal? But don't tell me, some people are not as sensible as animals. Hearing this, Liao Yue's face turned pale. Looking at Fan Swinning walking in front, his body bones were obviously stiff and formed into a straight line. Pan Yulu, who was walking aside with her servants, was actually forced to agree to swim in the lake, but now she felt very comfortable. As long as she could see Fan Swinning deflated, let alone walking these few steps, just walking she would be happy even if she traveled thousands of miles. Just looking at the laughing and joking of the princes and concubines around her, Pan Yula was still a little dazed. These were all ladies from famous families. Before they got married, who didn't live a tense life, let alone swearing in a roundabout way, just saying something. Don't speak loudly. But look at it now, you can't even breathe when you criticize Sang and Hui. Although she didn't want to admit it, Pan Yulu had to admit that Fan Kinjao was really good at it. Not only did he win over a group of people to follow her wholeheartedly, but he also made everyone believe in her unswervingly and stand up for her. Just like now, who doesn't know that the words they speak are causing hatred for themselves? But they are still so unhesitating. In the final analysis, it was because they believed in Fan Kinjao. Even if something happened, Fan Kinjao would be able to help them avoid danger. Liao Yue followed the second prince and concubine silently, facing the laughter and laughter of others. This time, let alone talking, she couldn't even raise her head. Fan Swinning, who was walking in front, was not much better. She felt so radiant just now, but now she felt so sharp and piercing her back. After walking to the edge of the lake, Fan Swinning turned around and smiled at everyone, the boat is ready, and there are some cakes and tea on it. Distinguished guests, please move carefully. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked to Pan Yulu first and helped Pan Yulu get on the boat. Everyone, look at me and I look at you. Except for Yan Hanbei, who turned directly to the pavilion and sat down, everyone else was walking towards the boat. The lake in the third prince's residence was artificially created after all, and was not as big as a moat. Even the boats prepared by the residents were small boats, and each boat could only accommodate 3 or 4 people at most. As Fan Kinjao got on the boat, the second princess and Liao Yue followed suit. Han Jingchen naturally wanted to take a boat with Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao looked at Han Jingchen and said, the third prince's health is not good, please help take care of her. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 849. Chapter 849. If you have a bad life, I will definitely be happy. Fan Swinning would never waste time on trivial matters. Now that he was preparing boats and placing cakes and tea, he probably had other plans. Fan Kinjao is not afraid of Fan Swinning's schemes, but she doesn't want to involve Han Jingchen. Hearing these words, Han Jingchen was obviously unwilling, but Fan Kinjao was Fan Kinjao, and what he said did not give her any room to refuse. If she said she was unwilling, wouldn't it mean that she was rejecting the third prince's concubine? Yan Hanbei in the pavilion watched Han Jingchen reluctantly get on the boat of the third prince and concubine, and wanted to laugh but also felt warm. No wonder so many people like to hang out with Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao is worth it? Looking down at Fan Kinjao, who was already sitting on the boat, Yan Hanbei said without hesitation, "Shout out if something happens, I will watch from the shore." It was Fan Swinning who was walking from Pan Yulu's boat to Fan Kinjao's boat. Hearing these words, his feet trembled and he almost fell into the lake. Fan Kinjao did not expect Fan Swinning to come back. Looking at Fan Swinning, who walked to her and sat down happily, Fan Kinjao became more and more suspicious of Fan Swinning's intentions. In this way, Han Jingchen took a boat with Pan Yulu and the 8th princess, while Fan Kinjao sat with Fan Swinning, the 2nd prince, and Liao Yue. As the boat rowed slowly towards the center of the lake, you can see with the naked eye that the lotus flowers in the lake are blooming extremely beautifully. Fan Kinjao calmly looked at the scenery around the lake. It was obviously due to the careful care of servants. But normally, Bailey Rongs was locked up in Dali Temple. How could the servants in the mansion do this? What about this thought? Or the people in the third prince's house knew that Bailey Rongs would definitely come back safely. The more Fan Kinjao thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. The matter had been handed over to Dali Temple by the military and horse division. Even if there was any action from concubine Yu, it was impossible to say that Bailey Rongs would be able to get Bailey Rongs out of Dali Temple. Fish it out. Nothing is inevitable. But why are the people in the third prince's residence so confident that Bailey Rongs will return safely? Looking at me like this, my sister must be very uncomfortable. Fan Swinning beside her suddenly spoke. Fan Kinjao came back to his senses instantly and found that Liao Yue on the boat was taking the 2nd princess to the other side to look at the lotus flowers. It was precisely because of this that Fan Swinning had the opportunity to talk to her like this. Your life is your own. What do you want to do with me? When Fan Kinjao spoke, he kept looking around, keeping his guard up to the tightest. There are no outsiders here, so why should sister pretend to be so magnanimous? Fan Swinning didn't believe that Fan Kinjao could really be calm to her. Since he had resentment towards her, now he's looking at what she's going through. It's natural to feel uncomfortable when things go smoothly. Fan Kinjao laughed after hearing this. I think your aunt occupied my mother's position at first, and then you occupied everything that belonged to me. From the moment you were born, there was no relationship between you and me. There is no need to speak of generosity, this is an obvious fact, why should I pretend? Fan Swinning, you don't have to think so highly of yourself, you are not that important in my heart. Fan Swinning bit her lip and said, Sister, why do you have to be so harsh? It's not hard words, it's the truth. You are the third prince's aunt, and I am the crown princess. There is a ditch between you and me when we are close, and we can't be hit by 8 poles when we are far away. Although I am a person I don't like fussing over things, so I won't even notice whether you're doing well or not. Even if you don't admit it, I'm living a good life now. But one thing you said is right. If you have a bad life, I will definitely be very happy. Before Fan Swinning could finish her words, Fan Kinjao interrupted her. Fanswinning. I have never seen such a straightforward person. Sister, there's no need to be so proud. So what if I'm the crown princess now? I haven't got married after all. Even if I do get married in the future, I'm still just the crown princess. Don't say I didn't remind my sister. His Highness the Crown Prince was lucky enough to reach this point. It's just relying on God's blessing. Being favored by God is also a blessing, and not everyone can ask for it. But sister, don't forget, God will not always favor one person. Even if God doesn't care for the prince, I think he won't care for you. After all, Aunt Fan's identity is here. God can't see you even if he has the intention. She is just an ant, how dare she sit here and utter arrogant words? Why don't you go to heaven? Fanswinning has long known that the Fan Kinjao sitting here is different from the Fan Kinjao in the dream. The Fan Kinjao in the dream is a fool who allows her to be deceived and driven. Even if she pushes her to a dead end in the end, she can't do anything. He was struggling everywhere, but now Fan Kinjao was full of calculations and thorns, which made people hate him so much. But even though Fanswinning had been prepared, she was still shocked by Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao pretended to look at the surrounding scenery and ignored Fanswinning. In fact, she was thinking about the conversation between the two of them just now. She always felt that there was something in Fanswinning's words. Could it be that concubine Yu not only found some way to free Bailey Rongs from suspicion, but also pulled Bailey Fengming into the water? So Fanswinning knew that Bailey Fengming was about to lose his footing and wanted to deal with it in advance. She does it manually. Where did Fanswinning get her confidence? No matter what countermeasures concubine Yu comes up with, how do you know that they will be foolproof? I didn't expect there were so many fish here, Liao Yuwei's voice suddenly sounded. Fan Kinjao stood up and found that their boat had unknowingly reached the center of the lake. This is also the deepest place in the entire lake. The scenery in the center of the lake is indeed beautiful. Fan Kinjao simply walked towards the side of the boat, thinking in his mind that Fanswinning brought her here. The worst plan was to take the opportunity to push her off the boat, seemingly standing on the boat on his own initiative. This is exactly what he wants, but in fact this is the only chance to escape. In his last life, Fan Kinjao loved swimming in lakes. In order to show his concern and love for Fan Kinjao, Bailey Rong simply hired a master who was good at swimming to teach Fan Kinjao swimming. Although Fan Kinjao did not have the chance in this life touching water, but the memory will not be erased. Furthermore, Fanswinning had only two options if she wanted to throw her into the lake. Either push her over or capsize the boat. If it's really the latter, sitting in the middle of the boat would be the stupidest choice. Fan Kinjao was thinking when he suddenly felt the boat beneath his feet shaking violently. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 850. Chapter 850, Jumping into the lake to save someone. The second princess and Liao Yuwei, who were also standing by the boat and admiring the scenery, were both shocked. Liao Yuwei's face turned pale. She turned to Fanswinning and asked, "Aunt Fan, does your boatman know how to row? If you really hurt me, how will you explain it?" Liao Yuwei only said that she would give an explanation, but she did not say who she would give the explanation to. Obviously, Liao Yuwei has been on the side of the third prince for a long time. But when Fan Kinjao looked at Liao Yuwei's attitude, he felt as if he was really completely unaware and frightened. Fanswinning hurriedly scolded the boatman, then stood up and walked over and said, "I'm really sorry for frightening the second princess, my sister, and others." Liao Yuwei. Who is waiting? Liao Yuwei knew that Fanswinning did not call her by name on purpose, and her angry face became even more ugly. No wonder concubine Yu never said a good word to Fanswinning when she entered the palace to meet concubine Yu. She was indeed an ignorant person. If the third prince hadn't been protecting her, concubine, you would have been unable to tolerate her. The second princess was also frightened. After hearing these words, she said, although I know that Aunt Fan made hasty preparations and was not very thorough, you still have to be careful when sailing. If something really happens, Aunt Fan will how to deal with it. Hearing the tone of this lesson, Fan Swinning clenched the handkerchief tightly, but she lowered her eyes and said, what the second princess said is true. I will definitely pay attention to it in the future. The second princess knew that the relationship between the princess and her sister had not been good, so she dared to speak, and she even wanted to take the opportunity to please the princess. However, looking at Fan Swinning's sincere confession of her mistake, she could not continue to get deeper into it. Said. And while everyone was talking, the boat had already stabilized. Fan Kinjao frowned as he looked at Fan Swinning, who was standing 3 steps away from several people. If Fan Swinning really wanted to take action, he would definitely come over deliberately. Fan Kinjao had already planned to have a fight with Fan Swinning, but looking at Fan Swinning like this, he was deliberately keeping a distance for fear of something happening. Some things can't be explained clearly. Ah. Suddenly, a piercing scream sounded from not far away. This time, not only Fan Kinjao, but also the second princess and Liao Yue also looked towards the source of the sound. I saw that the small boat that was driving smoothly in front of a few people had actually been buckled on the lake. Then, is that the small boat that the third princess and others are riding in? When the second princess spoke, her voice was trembling. This is the deepest place in the entire lake, and there are so many lotus plants planted below. Even without seeing it with your own eyes, you can imagine how much silt there is below. Hurry up and save people, Fan Kinjao ordered the boatman. The boatman probably knew Fan Kinjao's identity. He didn't even bother to ask Fan Swinning, and just rowed towards the place where the boat capsized. Seeing the boat upside down on the lake getting closer and closer, Fan Kinjao's heart was beating faster and faster. She had always thought that Fan Swinning's target was herself, but only now did she realize that she had been wrong from the beginning. Even if Fan Swinning hated her to death, for the current Fan Swinning, if he wanted to kill her, he would have to sacrifice his own life. After all, Fan Kinjao's identity as the crown princess lies here. So Fan Kinjao and Fan Swinning had been prepared to fight to the death early in the morning, waiting for Fan Swinning to bump into him and die on his own initiative. But who would have thought that Fan Swinning's target is not Fan Kinjao at all? Thinking about the people sitting on the boat in front of him, Fan Kinjao understood without thinking that even if something happened to the princes and concubines in the third prince's mansion, Fan Swinning would not be able to escape the blame, but the crime would not lead to death. In addition, with Bailey Wrong's favor, in the end this matter was just a matter of asking the boatman to back him up. And what if we really wait until then? I don't know if others will survive, but Panula will definitely not survive that time. As long as Panula dies, the position of the third prince's concubine will be vacant. As for Fan Swinning, what is important is the position of the third prince's concubine. It is really a vicious intention. It's not just the third prince's concubine, but also the sixth prince's concubine and the eighth prince's concubine. It would be very lively if something happened to them all, Liao Yue murmured softly, with a hint of schadenfreude in her voice. Fan Kinjao snorted coldly, if something happens, do you think you can hold off on the relationship? As soon as she finished speaking, before Liao Yue had time to react, she plunged into the lake. Such an action frightened everyone present. It is one thing for the princes and concubines to get into trouble, but it is another thing for the prince to get into trouble. Although Fan Swinning hated Fan Kinjao to death, she also knew in her heart that the identity of Crown Princess Fan Kinjao was not comparable to that of other princes and concubines. To put it bluntly, when the princes and concubines were in trouble, she just had to cry and find someone. It's fine to have someone on your back, but if something happens to the princess, she will have to peel off her skin even if she doesn't die. Just like no matter how much the emperor does not pay attention to the prince, in the final analysis he cannot easily get rid of the prince. Because in Ziliang, the status of the prince and the princess is very high and cannot be shaken easily. Don't be stunned, rush, hurry up and save people. This time, Fan Swinning was really panicked. She had just been restrained by Concubine Yu. If Concubine Yu used Fan Qinjiao's identity again this time, she would bite her to the death. Hold on to her. Fan Swinning gets a headache just thinking about it. Walking to the side of the boat and looking at the deep and sinking lake, Fan Swinning's lungs felt like they were going to explode. How dare Fan Qinjiao? Human life is at stake, why doesn't Fan Qinjiao dare? By doing this, Fan Qinjiao really wanted to use her status as the crown prince to make things worse and make Fan Swinning suffer the consequences. But similarly, she could not let anything happen to Han Jingchen and the 8th prince's concubine. I thought that only by leaving her would both of them be safe, but I never thought that Fan Swinning had treated Han Jingchen and the 8th prince's concubine as cannon fodder from the very beginning. As for the 2nd princess, it was probably because of Liao Yue that Fan Swinning was let go. Furthermore, if Fan Swinning wanted to escape responsibility, she also needed witnesses. Thinking of Fan Swinning's cruelty, if Fan Qinjiao can't take the opportunity to break a few of her bones, how can he relieve the hatred in his heart? The weather in July was already getting hotter, but the water in the deep lake was still bitingly cold. Fan Qinjiao tried hard to speed up his paddling, just to avoid freezing his body first. "Princess," an exclamation suddenly sounded not far away. Fan Qinjiao walked around the boat that was upside down on the lake, and saw the 8th princess struggling to pull Han Jingchen, and the two of them were rising and falling on the lake. When he suddenly saw the crown princess, the 8th prince and concubine thought they were dazzled. End of this chapter.